Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, brothers and sisters, is due to the fact that we want to have an extended version of a presentation due to the fact that the claim is made that the Torah, brothers and sisters, all right, is said to come from the principles of Ma'at. Now, brothers and sisters, we know that is actually not the case, brothers and sisters. All right? Now, one of the things to point out is this. What they refer to as the Papyrus Hanit, brothers and sisters, is dated to the New Kingdom of Egypt. That's to say from Dynasty 18, 19, and so forth. You understand? Whereas the book of Exodus is dated, brothers and sisters, to the era, if you look at the Egyptian timeline, is dated to the era of the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. All right? So that's something, brothers and sisters, we do want to point out for edification purposes. All right? Now, brothers and sisters, we've gone over in other presentations the actual list of what they refer to as the principles of Ma'at. And there are certain things that's in the Torah that's not in the principles of Ma'at. There are certain things that's in the principles of Ma'at that's not in the Torah. So, brothers and sisters, we'll have to understand, where did that concept, ideology, and teaching come from? It did not come from Egyptians saying that they taught the Hebrews. All right? It did not come from Hebrews saying that they were taught by the Egyptians. So, with that being the case, brothers and sisters, it's emphatically stated in this particular presentation that the Torah is not from Ma'at. This is for those who are interested. Next slide. Land of the Habiru. Now, what you're looking at, brothers and sisters, all right, with the laser pointer, you see Assyrian Empire, Hittite Empire, Syria. Now, we want to focus real quick, brothers and sisters, right, on where it says Syria for a particular reason. And I want to circle it so we can see what I'm talking about. All right? Circled also right there in the red, where it speaks about Syria. Now, the ancient Egyptians referred to Syria as Khor, Khor. All right, so we want to point that out. Khor. Now, brothers and sisters, let's color code this. Now, we ain't got to color code it different. Let's look at this right here, Summa. Right? Summa, brothers and sisters, all right, referred to Egyptians, all right, as Magan. Magan. Babylon and Ur, like you see Ur of Chaldea, Assyrian Empire, and here we see where it says civilizations influenced by the Habiru. All right? Now, what we've been pointing out, brothers and sisters, is that the Habiru were not all Israelites, yet all Israelites were considered to be the Habiru. In other words, they were Habiru, aka today's terminology, English as Hebrews, that were not Israelites. All right, this is why when you go in the book of Samuel 14, it talks about the Hebrews on the other side, because they were Hebrews that were not Israelites, yet all Israelites are Hebrews. All right? Magan is the Sumerian way of saying Egypt. All right. So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right. So we already explained, brothers and sisters, that the Israelites refer to Egypt as Mizraim. Now, the Habiru or the Apiru or the Habiru or all different terminologies, such as the Apiru of the ancient Egyptians, inside of the language of the Akkadian people and the people of Akkad were also in the same vicinity that we see here. So you had what is understood as transliterations, all right? Transliterations, brothers and sisters, is when you take something from one language and then you make it conform to your language, but it's not a translation. Such as much as saying Isaiah means coming from the word Yeshaya. Isaiah is not the translation of Yeshaya. The translation of Yeshaya is God is salvation. The transliteration of Yeshaya is Isaiah. So these are things you just want to point out in that particular regard. All right. The Assyrian Empire, all right, that we see right here becomes of importance. The Hittite Empire as well. All of these different nations, the Hittites, all right, were part of the Hamite people. H-A were Hamites. The Assyrians were part of the Shemite people. So you had Assyria from Ashur, all right, from the line of Shem. You had from the line of the Hamites, namely through the line of Canaan, you had the Hatti. Now, in Egyptians, they refer to the Hittites as the Ketu, K-H-E-T-U. So this is the point of what I'm talking about. Well, different nations calling other nations bywords, if you will. All right? Or is there any questions about what we've gone over so far? Now, let's look, brothers and sisters, if we will, at the laser pointer. And look at this right here, where we see the two people on the left-hand side. The people that you see there on the left-hand side is a picture that's taken from the movie, The Ten Commandments, the movie that came out back in the 1950s. Now, I pointed that out because in it says the Ethiopian king and his sister were presenting gifts to Seti inside of that, right? Now, let's look at that right there. How is it that the people in the background, right, not trying to be funny or anything like that, how is it that you see the people that you see there in the background there and so forth, right? How are they Caucasoid? And then you know the movie Ten Commandments, they got the aspect, brothers and sisters, of the people being Caucasoid as pharaohs. Yet, once it came down to the Ethiopian, or said by some as the Nubian, they had to sit there and show them as people of color or people of melanin hue. Why? Because the ancient Ethiopia was never conquered like these civilizations were, such as the Hebrews, such as the Syrians, such as the Sumerians, such as the Hittites, such as the Assyrians. All of these people that you see here and what they refer to in this particular part of the quote unquote terminology, the Levant area, brothers and sisters, was conquered by the Ptolemies. They were ruled by brothers and sisters, the Seleucids. They were ruled by the Caesars. You understand? Whereas once it came down to Ethiopia, it wasn't under the hegemony and the domination like that of the Europeans. So now in 1950s, they still got to show who they understand as Ethiopians, as people of color or black people. Whereas the Hebrews, the Israelites, were conquered by the Europeans. Whereas the Egyptians were conquered by the Europeans. So it's easy to show a European, a white person, image of the Egyptian. It's easy now to show an image of a white person as a Hebrew because they were both conquered by the white people, whereas the Ethiopians were not. You can't show a white person saying that that's an Ethiopian. You understand? So that's what we want to point out by showing that picture right there. All right, next slide. Now, what you're looking at, brothers and sisters, on the left-hand side is what they refer to as Levant. The Levant area. This here, what you see on the right-hand side, is how it looked from, as it says, from space, how Egypt looks. This here being the Sinai. Now, why did I go into this particular regard? Because the Bible speaks about the area that we're going to show highlighted, right? We're going to show this area here highlighted. Okay, we won't do it with that. We'll use a different color pen. All righty. This area here in the green is referred to as Derek Palestine, which means the way of the Philistines. All right. So that's what we want to point out in that particular regard. So when the Israelites did leave up out of Goshen, which is referred to as Kasan inside of the Egyptian, right? When they left up out of there, going through this, they didn't go through this way. They went this way and wound up going to what's modern day Saudi Arabia, where the actual Mount Sinai is at. This is not the Mount Sinai. So they didn't go down here and go up. They came and went this way. Now, Exodus 17 talks about the Amalekites attacking the Israelites. These Amalekites, as we're going to show and point out, were part of the people known later on in history as the Hyksos. The Israelites leaving Exodus, right? Or making an Exodus up out of Egypt in the middle kingdom of Egypt. So now when the Pharaoh's army is not able to defend themselves, as you see in the aspect of what's going on with Neferhotep the third of Dynasty 13, he spoke about that. You understand? When you get into history, you will begin to see how the Hyksos were able to just come into Egypt, all right? And we want to show that in a particular color, if we will, all right? And how the Hyksos were able to come through here and just set up shop, all right? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right. Are there any questions about what we're going over so far? Any questions or comments concerning the presentation so far? All right. The Egypt Matter Yisrael Yashub, which means Israel will return. So we're going over and showing the Sinai. What you're seeing me circle right here in the yellow, right, currently is not the real Mount Sinai. This X here is where the real Mount Sinai is. All right. The Israelites leaving up out of Egypt in the red were then allowing brothers and sisters, the Hyksos, to come in. All right. So now the Hyksos that came in, there were two waves of Hyksos, as was known in history. So this is something we want to point out. The Israelites leaving out caused what's called the second wave of the Hyksos to come in. The first wave of the Hyksos is what you get into the era of Joseph in the Bible. So these are things we want to point out for edification purposes. And as shown here, this area here is what they refer to as the Levant. This here, as you know, is the Mediterranean Sea. So the Israelites, as we want to review for those who just joined on, right? They didn't go by the way of the Philistines, all right? They went, brothers and sisters, through this way here, going to what is now modern day Saudi Arabia, and then going up into the land of Canaan that way. They didn't go up this way. They went through the eastern part of the land of Canaan. This is why when it says Moses died in the plains of Moab, this is Moab in the area right here. You understand? So now when you have the tribe of Gad, as we're going to point out, let's see, Gad, Reuben, I know the penmanship is not the best with that, and Manasseh on the east side of the Jordan, right? No, see, that G isn't even going to work. I can't even play myself with that one. This is, no, we got to do better. We got to do better with this penmanship. I'm talking to myself, all right? I know. So we got Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben, right, on the east side of the Jordan, or on this side over here. So when the Israelites left up out of Egypt, they went through here, into the Sinai, through the Sinai, right? Got into what's modern day Saudi Arabia and came this way. Remember, after the death of Moses, it said that the Israelites went over what? The Jordan. But Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben was already settled. This is why Moses and the tribes on the east side of the Jordan were, quote unquote, having it out between themselves. Because he was saying, when your brothers go over the Jordan, don't forsake them when it comes down time to war. And the tribe of Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben said, no, we won't forget them. Yet, you know how our people are good. That's what the tribes on the east side of the Jordan said, I got my land, I'm good. The other tribes that's on the western side of the Jordan, y'all good, right? All right, I'm gonna stay right here. Moses told Gad, Manasseh, and Reuben, do not do that. Do not forget your brethren to go and fight with them on their behalf against the people of Canaan. But as stated, what did they do? Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben, when they got settled, and the tribes under Joshua went in through the Jordan, the Israelites on the east side didn't help them. Who that sound like? Yeah, I'm there for you. I got you. Ain't that what we say to one another? I got you, Ak. I got you, Ak. And then what happens when it comes down to it? Son, ain't nothing different since the days of Joshua until the days of us now. We still don't help each other. But we'll be all right, one way or the other. You understand? So let's go on to the next slide. The Torah is not for Ma'at part 2. Let's go Yisrael by Yeshua Yisrael self on Thursday, November 3rd, 2011, 8:39 p.m. Now, brothers and sisters, this is now 2019. That is a little over 6 years if you look at from the time of November to the time of March. We're not playing games with this. You understand? This is something that's been worked on for a long time in presentation. You understand? So once it comes down into it, this is why, not being funny, I find it peculiar when you got to keep on changing your staff to go against the house of Israel. There are certain brothers in Israel who don't do the debate thing, who don't go back and forth with people over and over and over and over. You understand? But the people who seem to want to set up things against Israelites for views, for debate purposes, and everything of that sort, you seem to have to keep on changing your staff. You understand? It's because it's inconsistent. Don't you see what it is in the so-called conscious community? Anytime they try to sit there and step up and debate the house of Israel, you see them debating themselves eventually, not too long after that. Because it says, no weapon formed against the house of Israel will prosper. So even though they set up their groups and their chats and they talk against Israelites, you begin to see them after a while not being that comfortability one with another because they don't have no laws, statutes, and commandments. You understand? They don't have that. You understand? That's the difference between Israel and them. That's how they can sit there and give you a real estate scam and act like ain't nothing wrong with a clear conscience. Israelites who have been scammers, you know what happens with them? They go in hiding. They don't usually show their face after that. They got to sit back and be like, oh no, everybody's going to sit there and talk about me now. But once it comes down to the so-called comedic community, when they give you fake real estate scams, going on other people's property, talking about this is mine, we know who it is, those who know what it is. When you got people talking about, I'm going to fix your credit, and they're charging you to sit there for them to do the research. In legality, you're not supposed to charge people initially for you to do the research. But in the comedic community, they have been known for doing that. Because, see, they don't have no thou shalt not deal falsely with thy neighbor. They have ma'at in their life, supposedly, that says, I have not defrauded. But brothers and sisters, once it comes down into it, if you're saying I have not defrauded, that means that you already knew that it was already wrong, which means that the principles of Ma'at already had to come from laws. But they'll tell you they don't deal with no laws. They deal with the aspect of nature and netter and nature. It's games, brothers and sisters. The conscious community is the African version of the European black church. Give me your money. They got one as the pastor, the deacon, and the reverend. You understand? So these are things that we just want to point out for edification purposes. All you got to do is just look at their ways and just sit back. Because see, I remember before YouTube existed, being raised in the understanding of Israel since I was a child. Now, blessed be the Creator, I'm 39 years old. I remember when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, the Nuwabians were hard in New York. Jamaica Avenue in New York City used to have all of Dr. York books. This before YouTube came out. YouTube came out, brothers and sisters, in 2005. You understand? There are debates between the Nuwabians, who were under Dr. York, and the Israelites were deep. You understand? So I don't understand how people can step back and think on YouTube now that they're going to, quote, bring it to the Israelites, supposedly, when Dr. York used to actually make Israelites go back and study, hands down. That's not a lie. The people in the conscious community now don't make Israelites go back and study. Because after what they call the Kemet on trial and all these other debates that came up and down, which, not being funny, I was supposed to be on the panel with the Kemet on trial debate. You know that? You know when they had that Kemet on trial debate? You know I was supposed to be part of that crew? But something told me, brother, don't entertain that. Go take your little girl to see a show. That's exactly what I did. Because with those who may not know, with the Kemet on trial debate, who know, for the people who know what in the world I'm talking about, back in 2015, anytime you set up a debate, you're supposed to, behind the scenes, set up what you will not ever talk about during the debate. Don't talk about my family. Don't talk about this stuff. You understand what I'm saying? The people who was running the Kemet on trial debate, who was setting the rules down, were people who was of the Kemetic aspect themselves. So it's not like Israelites were there and people from the Kemetic community were there, and then you had, say, the Moors or the Muslims as a moderator. The moderators, brothers and sisters, in the Kemet on trial debate, brothers and sisters, besides those who was keeping the time on their watch, were the Kemetic community themselves. So when brothers who went up there were not allowed to finish their speech, and you started late, and the aspect where it turned into some big kind of WWE referee kind of thing, straight garbage. I'm glad I didn't participate in that. To the brothers who did, more power to you. But I ain't sitting down in every social setting, because it ain't worth all that. Because what the Kemetic community has done is taken ancient Metuneta, ancient Semitawi, ancient Egyptian, and made a religion out of it. That's why when you talk about Pepi of Dynasty 6 being a faggot, being a homosexual, it doesn't bother them because they could care less about the Egyptian aspect themselves. Whereas Israelites, we're going to sit there and say, look, this talks about King Hezekiah, because we feel, know and understand, we got to show and prove once it comes down to that. They don't feel they got to know, show, and prove. You understand? Because they're not really living that life. Somebody who is a Christian, mind you, pointed this out. Israelites walk with their Bible. When you see the Kemetic people, they don't walk with the Papyrus Ani translated as a source. You don't see them standing in the street reading the Tales Amenhotep. You don't see that. You understand? You don't see them talking about the writings of the Egyptians like that. This is something we want to point out. Israelites are going to represent their books. That's the difference. You understand? Now, are Israelites perfect? Absolutely not. But I want to state this as well. When the Kemetic community asks us as Israelites, and I say this not to sound harsh, where is King Solomon's temple? Where is this? And what is that? And do you know the measurements of the temples in Egypt? That's the spirit of a woman. And what do I mean by that? A woman asks a man, what have you built lately? A woman asks a man, what have you done lately? But when a man, say in this case, from the Kemetic community, ask an Israelite, where's Solomon's temple? Would you, my brother, expect to come into any organization and not have to build from scratch? You expect to come in and not have to put, quote, no work in. You expect to come in and everything be already laid out for you. So it's already easily claimed Kemetic science without being the actual lineal claimant of the ancient Egyptian people. Because then you don't have to go against the Arabs that's over in the land of Egypt today. Whereas Israelites, there's a video that came out in 1986 of the Israelites in the land of Israel standing against the Israeli army. Did you know that? Did you know that when the Israelites went over to the land of Israel, they tore their passports up and said, bye-bye, America, aka what they call hell, H-E-L-L. So the point I'm saying in all of that is this. Not only, may he rest in peace, Ben Ami, he was not the only leader to take Israelites over to the land of Israel. There are different groups that left from America that went over to the land of Israel. Whereas, not to be disrespectful, once it comes down to who they call Ashwa crazy, he'll take people way over to Egypt, then you got to come right back. You can't get rid of that passport because he ain't setting up no houses for you over there. The Israelites that are in the land, not that everything is perfect, they live, we're talking 10, 15 to an apartment. It's good. It gets real like that for them sometimes. You understand? So they understood when they left America, they went, the one group I'm talking about in particular, went to Liberia. They went to Liberia from 1967. Where were these guys in Kemet at then? Okay, next subject. In 1967, when they went over there to Liberia to get, as they call, America out of them. And then in 1969, went over to the land of Israel. The Asar or Set society was created after the Israelites out of America went to the land of Israel. So we want to point out what rules what in this conscious community. That's why I call this, brothers and sisters, the Egypt Matter Yisrael Yashub. Because, brothers and sisters, let's understand something. If you're talking about all these lands here, Egypt, Israel, the Sinai, and so forth and so on, and you're going to sit there, all right, and I'll ask this before, I'm going to name it. I asked this on Side Netta's channel. No answer yet, because I check ever so often to see if I got the notification as an answer. So let's see what's going on here. If you're pointing out that, say, E here stands for Egypt, right? S here stands for the Sinai. Do you know, brothers and sisters, the ancient Egyptians used to go into the Sinai to dig out what they call the Kesbed. The Kesbed is what we call diamonds and rubies today out of the Sinai Peninsula. Did you know? Let's look at this here. We're going to call this here B. Not Babylon, but Byblos. The Emperor Papyrus speaks about ships going from Egypt to Byblos. What is the point in that? if you had ancient Egyptians digging inside the Sinai Peninsula, if you had ancient Egyptians doing business with the people of Zidon in the land of Byblos, brothers and sisters, when did Egypt stay black? And you're saying the people put Y right here for Yisrael were white. I need an answer for this one. Because if you can admit that ancient Egypt was black and they dealt with digging into the mines in the Sinai, so there were black people in the Sinai because Egyptians were black, you're saying they went into the Sinai, they dealt business with the people of Zidon. Zidon later on went way over here into what they call, maybe I ain't got it on the map, but Tunisia and formed what you call the Carthaginians. They were black as well. So when you got black people from there going across the Mediterranean, Egyptians going north into the Mediterranean, why are you saying that the people who were here under the prophets were white? Chancellor Williams, in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, said that the Jews of old were white. Now, I got a question. Who paid you to give up that part of Africa? I asked this question before. I asked it on Sarnetta's channel. Who paid you to sit there and give up the land of the Levant, which is connected to Africa before the Suez Canal was built in 1869? Why would you say that the people or the Jews of the Bible were white? Can somebody answer that? I don't want a response, not to be haughty. I want an answer, because there's a difference between answering and responding. I tell you who paid them. The white man. That's who paid them. Because see, when the Israelites went over to the land of Israel, right? The Jewish people who have hegemony over there, the descendants of the Caesars, the Ptolemies, and the Seleucids, right? That's over in the land of Israel today. They changed what they called the law of return. Before, all you had to feel was a Jew in your heart. Now it became a thing when black folk out of Chicago and Detroit started going over there. Then it became a thing of, oh, you gotta your mother gotta be Jewish. Nowhere in the Torah does it speak your mother must be something. All mothers know they're supposed to be good mommies. That's already understood. But I had a mother, and this is not a knock on women, but in our culture as Israel, no, I'm not going to go, you are what your father is. We've been saying that and know it for years. The mothers get respect in the house of Israel. It says in the Apocrypha, the curse of the mother rooteth out from the foundations. You're going to have kids just like you. Please don't tell your children that, because that does come to pass. All right. I was a knucklehead in school. My daughter's not a knucklehead, but she'll sit there and try to wiggle her way out of doing work as much as she could. If we're not on her behind now, let's look at the assignment. Let's look at the assignment. You ain't going to sit there and show us the homework. Every time we talk to our little girl about the homework assignment, it's we got to sit there and say to her, show it to us. She doesn't volunteer and say, here, I did the homework. The same game I was running as a child, well, if they don't check the notebook, so be it. It's the same game I see being done. So now we want to get back nonetheless to this presentation, right? Let's go on. Torah does not come from Ma'at. This should be common sense, but this is not the case. In part one, which is what we've gone over, we went over the fact that Israel, the land, and the people are not from Egypt. The reasons for such come from geographic and spiritual reasons. Next slide. All right. In this writing, we will go over the fact that others speak of the same premise. Josephus, for instance, speaks in his writings that people in his day and time thought the Israelites were from Egyptian stock of people. But that is not the case, states Josephus. The following is stated from the Roman historian Tacitus. Many again say that they, the Jews, were a race of Ethiopian origin, who in the time of King Cepheus were driven by fear and hatred of their neighbors to seek a new dwelling place. The Roman historian Tacitus was saying that the Jews were believed to be in his day and time from Ethiopia. Can we go back to show what the Romans would have been thinking these Jews were looking like? Is what you see right here. These are Ethiopians, even in the movie The Ten Commandments that was pointed out in the 1950s. See, brothers and sisters, the reason why we go over these kind of things is to go for edification purposes. Maybe they didn't expect people to read. You were supposed to keep playing games. You were supposed to not want to study. It's Saturday night. You're supposed to be out. What did Biggie Small say? Party and bleep bleep. Yet, we're going over a presentation about history and geography and linguistics. And speaking as a male, brothers, whatever your passion is, don't even have to be history or even this kind of subject. Whatever your passion is, be it from cooking to cleaning to painting, it will drive away the women that's not meant for you. I remember going over history, for instance. Oh, he boring. Shalom lahit ra'ot. It's been real. You're weird. No problem. Whatever your passion is, be it writing, reading, teaching, learning, painting, cooking, research, whatever. Speaking as a man to the brothers, it will drive away the women that's not meant for you. Don't run after them. Let them go and find her passion. You understand? But don't change up what you are about, because that's what the Most High is giving you. If you're a chef, don't stop cooking because you and her started going out. Cook for her. If you're an author, if you're into history, involve the sister in your life in it. And if she doesn't want to be involved in it, it's been real. You understand? So these are things we want to talk about for edification purposes. Life. Next part. The above statement is what Tacitus wrote about the Jews who were better known as the Israelites in their origin. If the people in the time of Tacitus thought the Jews were from Ethiopia, then obviously they had to look like Ethiopians. The Ethiopians were in all black. Tacitus states further in his writings the following. Moses, wishing to secure for the future his authority over the nation, gave them a novel, which means new. All right, this word here, all right, novel means new. Gave them a new form of worship, opposed to all that's practiced by other men. Things sacred with us, the Romans, with them, the Jews, have no sanctity, while they, the Jews, allow what with us, the Romans, is forbidden. They, the Jews, slay the ram, seemingly in derision of Hammon, and they sacrifice the ox because the Egyptians worship it as Apis. They abstain from swine's flesh in consideration of what they suffered when they were infected by leprosy, to which this animal is liable. By their frequent fasts, They bear witness to the long hunger of former days. And the Jewish bread, made without leaven, is retained as a memorial of their hurried season of corn. Brothers and sisters, right? Let me just point this out right here. Tacitus is saying of the Israelites, right? They abstained from swine's flesh. Did you know the Egyptians did eat pork? Did you know that the principles of Ma'at have no diet? Did you know that? The principles of Ma'at, I have not stolen. I have not swindled offerings. I have not made anyone cry. There's nothing in the principles of Ma'at that speaks about diet. Everybody knows Leviticus 15 and Deuteronomy 14. You understand? So that's the difference between Israel and the nations. In considering of what they suffered when they were infected by the leprosy to which this animal is liable, by their frequent fasts, they still bear witness to the long hunger of former days. The book of Zechariah talks about the fast of the 5th month, the 7th month, and the other months. There were 4 fasts, brothers and sisters, that ancient Israel used to have as a way of their own kind of thing. You understand? And I see I have to put the charger in the line because I didn't do it before I started. So making a PowerPoint and then having it sitting there without it being charged is why you see the thing says the battery is low, but we're going to work on that right now. Okay, so now, brothers and sisters, in the Jewish, which we know is Israel, bread made without leaven. That is another difference between the Israelite culture and the ways of the other nations. Because having unleavened bread, like during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, did you know that unleavened bread is very healthy? Do you know that people who promote veganism speak about what they call Ezekiel bread that he was told to make in Ezekiel chapter 2, in Ezekiel chapter 3? Did you know that the Torah, let's go in. Did you know that the Torah is the only culture that promotes washing as much as it does? Wash. Said in Hebrew as rakas. Wash yourself. Now there's a spiritual washing, your character. Then we're talking about when a man and a woman are carnal with each other and he ejaculates, he has to wash himself. He's in a state of being unclean. When a woman goes through her uncleanness, her cycle, her menstrual, when she's off of that, as in the case of Bathsheba in the book of Samuel, she was bathing herself because she was coming off of her uncleanness. You understand? The other ways of the other nations, they don't operate like that. They put a thing called tampons inside of their vaginal canal and sometimes forget it's there. Then up there, like, I got cramps in my stomach because you're not as clean as the Torah talks about. Do you understand? Leviticus 15 talks about if a man has an issue. That is talking about what we call today as syphilis and gonorrhea. Do you know how syphilis and gonorrhea happens? One way, brothers and sisters, is not by being clean. Do you know that there's a disease formed from a thing called sperma? Sperma is the liquid that forms between the head of the penis and when it's uncircumcised. Why do you see Torah telling you to be circumcised? You understand? And it's not to sound carnal. A wife will tell you, if she's ever been with a man that's uncircumcised, that it is definitely different to her. You understand? So the Torah, brothers and sisters, is a light, as it says in the book of Proverbs. Brothers and sisters, there was cleanliness in the house of Israel. And as I'm pointing out, they will point this out in quote unquote religious courses in college. The Torah is the only book that talks about washing as much as any culture does. Look in Leviticus, as much as it talks about wash and wash your clothes, and he shall bathe himself, and she shall bathe herself. We want a clean and bathed people, brothers and sisters. All right. Next slide. Tacitus goes on to say this. We are told that the rest of the seventh day was adopted because this day brought with it a termination of their toils, after which the charm of indolence beguiled them to give up the seventh year also to inaction. Now, he's being sarcastic, but what he's talking about, brothers and sisters, is that in Leviticus 25, there's a jubilee. So every 7 years, you let the land rest. The European culture will work the land, work the land, work the land, work the land. Then you got to dig in the land. Then when you find, because the crust and then there's the mantle of the earth. The mantle is always shaking against each other. The reason why you find certain earthquakes in certain places is because this European man that sat there and dug the oil and didn't let the earth rest. So now you find earthquakes in different parts of the world because you're stealing the minerals out of it without allowing the earth to replenish itself. Just like our people in slavery. When we were being enslaved, they didn't give us a day of rest because when they went to church on Sunday, we were still out there picking things, cutting things, being raped, as well being made to be carnal with them. Did you know that? You know, in slavery, there were white women that used to buy black men just so she could sit there and have him as a sex slave. We already know the European man bought sisters for that purpose. But the women of them did as well. You understand? So now, brothers and sisters, and after, it says, after a while, the charm of indolence beguiled them into giving up the seventh year also to inaction. Quite different is there, the Jews, about things divine. The Egyptians worship many animals in images of monstrous form. The Jews have purely conceptions of deity, meaning of God, as one in essence. Brothers and sisters, we don't make images in Israel of an eagle and say this is supposed to be the inner being in your inner being of God. No, what you have done is called generic engineering. That's what you've done. You understand? Thoth, Thoth of ancient Egypt, is nothing more but generic engineering, one of their gods that they done sat there and created. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, the Egyptians worship many animals in images of monstrous form. Ancient Israel wasn't into that, not in their own culture. And Israelites that were into that were deemed as kata'im, which means sinners. So we want to point that out. Torah does not come from ma'at. And anybody who says that are people who don't understand what Torah is or even what ma'at is. Next slide. Tacitus goes on to say, they call those profane who make representations of God in human shape of perishable materials. Don't we, O house of Israel? We're going to make this image of a man and say this is God. That's profanity. Idolatry is profanity. Because what you've done, instead of acknowledging that we as man are to be godly, you want God to become manly. So we were made by the Most High, and what you want to do is say you want to be God, so you want to make another human. They believe that being, meaning that God, to supreme and eternal, neither capable of representation or decay. They, the Israelites, the Jews, okay, therefore do not allow any images in their cities, much less in their temples. The Jewish religion, which we understand is the house of Israel's Torah, is tasteless and mean, because remember, he's writing this long before the European Jews became converted. All right? The Jewish religion is tasteless and mean. Eastward, he goes into geography now. The country is bounded by Arabia. To the south lies Egypt. On the west are the Phoenician and Mediterranean. Northward, it commands the extensive prospect over Syria. So he's talking about the aspect of the geography of the land of Israel, which we shown earlier. Next slide. Let us understand that the culture of Egypt and Israel are different. So now when they're saying that principles of Ma'at is where Torah came from, no, it didn't. And there's still people saying that. When you look at the pictures of the Egyptian men, be they priests or otherwise, we see that their head is shaved. Some say that this is due to the Egyptians viewing hair on them as being dirty. This is in sharp contrast to the culture of Israel. Let us look at Leviticus chapter 21, verse 1 through 2 and verse 5. Speak unto the children of Aaron, the priests, and say unto them, they shall not make baldness on their heads. So the Israelite priests are not supposed to be bald. Can I be heard? Can I get a 2 if I can be heard? Let's go, because we want to emphasize on what we're talking about for edification purposes, all right? The Israelite priests in the culture of the Israelites are not supposed to be bald, right? Can I get a 2 if I can be heard? Now, let's go on. Now we see that the priests in Israel were not to make baldness on their heads. Yet we see in the temples of Egypt, such as from Karnak and others, that the priests are bald. Shaven heads in the culture of Israel was not viewed in a good light. Let us look at Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 29. Cut off the hair and cast it from thee, and take up what? Lamentations on high places. For Yah have rejected the generation of his wrath. What does it say, brothers and sisters? Cut off the hair and cast it from thee, and take up lamentations. You know what lamentations mean? Sadness, weeping, crying, not happy. In the culture of the Israelites, a shaven head, and some people do it, is a sign of mourning. You understand? In the book of Judges, chapter 5, it says, it is a glorious thing that men in Israel let their hair grow. That's how you know the people inside of ancient Egyptian pictures with afros, they're not Egyptians, because their thing was not about letting their hair grow like that. You understand? Next slide. This shows that having a shaved head in the culture of Israel is viewed as a negative thing, not a way of being clean. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 9, we see that one who is of the Ancient of Days did sit, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. Obviously, this image is not one of a bald person, as we see in the artwork of the Egyptians. The priests also, in the future of Israel, will not have bald heads, according to Ezekiel 44, verse 20. Neither shall they shave their heads. It should be obvious that the priesthood of ancient Egypt and the priesthood of ancient Israel is not the same. Now, this is an image of the ancient Egyptian priests. We don't went over Leviticus, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. What you're looking at right here on the top part is an image of an Egyptian priest bald. You understand? That's not the culture of the house of Israel. The point in emphasizing that is this. If the priests of any society holding the spiritual aspect of the people, who are intercessors for the people into the spiritual aspect of certain things, because believe you me, the priests of ancient Israel knew certain arts. When you talk about in the book of Joshua about casting lots, when the priest approached King Uzziah, you're not supposed to do that offering. And he did it anyway, and he got leprosy. When the priest in the time of Jeroboam knew what they was doing, and his offering got messed up and his hand went back onto him, the priest of ancient Israel knew certain kinds of arts, if you will. The book of Psalms 106 says that Moses and Aaron were among the priests of the Most High. So when Moses is told in Exodus to go and take soot from the furnace in ancient Egypt and throw it up, and it shall break out upon the Egyptians in boils and blains, there's a science behind that. Moses knew what it was. It's in Exodus. This is not made up. Go into Egypt, put your hand in a furnace, and take soot out from it and throw it in the air. Do you realize what that was to ancient Egyptians was this? The ancient Egyptians used to save the ashes from the old kingdom. When the pharaoh or the leader died, his servants was cremated. And those ashes were part of the murdered servants that was supposed to be with the pharaohs in the later life. So by the prophet Moses taking the ashes from the furnace and throwing it up in the air, that boils and blains was an attack upon the Egyptian god or Set, which the Greeks called Isis. So when it says in Exodus that Elohim, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, will make war against the gods of Egypt, we know what it's talking about. So these are things we want to talk about for edification purposes. Brothers and sisters, the Israelites were known to have to, quote, see something to understand. Moses, put your hand in your bosom. And when he put his hand, of course, the Ten Commandments movie didn't do that part. When he put his hand in his bosom, it came out white. Then it returned back to its original color. Moses, do this sign in front of the Egyptians so they may know and understand. Take the staff that's in your hand and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. We already know about the serpent inside of the ancient Egyptian culture. One of it was called Uraeus. The other one was called Apep of ancient Egypt. They used to worship that kind of aspect. So you take this staff and you cast it in front of them. And when what they think is God coming out of that staff, or the staff becoming what they think is a God, they will cast their staffs down, but yours shall eat theirs. So the Most High dealt with the Egyptians according to, as it says in Exodus, the Egyptians dealt with their secret arts. So now in Psalms 82, when it says that the Most High sits in the congregation of the judges, he knows about the cultures of all peoples. He knows about what Balak hired Balaam to do to curse the house of Israel. He knows what the Illuminati does when they sit there and say, well, we're going to put this in the black community and we're going to do that. The Most High knows about all the meetings that they have in Bohemian Grove every July in California. Nothing is hidden from the Creator. So when the Egyptians had their own thing with their own secret arts, these Egyptians of today have things with their own secret arts. And then you begin to see it fails. the plagues come back upon them. You put black communities under the sword of crack and cocaine. And now the opioid is destroying them. When you read in Lamentations in the Bible, because this is not the turn the other cheek God that we're talking about. When you read in Lamentations, it says, Edom too shall drink of the cup of fury. So just as they plotted, when you see the movie Godfather, we put crack in the Negro population so they can destroy themselves. That was said in a movie in 1973 called The Godfather. So now when you find Nicky Barnes, Guy Fisher, Richard Porter, AZ, Alpo, Fritz, and all these other big top drug dealers out of Harlem, destroying their own people by plan and design. So did the Most High have a plan and design? As my people was addicted to crack, so shall the nations drink of the opioid in the Midwest. Just as the black woman was unemployed and selling her body, so shall the daughters of these other nations deal with having to sit there and see their daughters go through it. These are things that we're talking about. Just like it says in the book of Exodus, Israel is my son, my firstborn. If you refuse to let my son go, I will slay your son, your firstborn. The Most High has not changed. Israel is still the son of the Most High. They still want to sit there and make war against the Most High by attacking us, the children of the Most High. So will the Most High bring that sword upon them. If you don't think so, all you got to do is see what's going on in D.C. Who do you think gave that guy Michael Cohen the spirit to speak against Trump in front of Congress? It's the same creator, the same God who gave the spirit to say, start the Civil War. Because see, Lincoln was noted for saying, for everybody who died in the Civil War was a payment for every lash that the Negro got. Did you know Lincoln said that? Can I get a 3 if I'm able to be heard? Lincoln said, for everybody who died in the Civil War was a payment for every lash that they gave the slaves in America. So who do you think rose the spirit of who they call General Lee and the spirit of Grant to go against each other? The Most High did. The Most High spoke on that. He said in the book of Ezekiel, there will be a time when he will take his sheath, his sword out the sheath, and massive amounts of wars will be going on. The Most High caused that. So as they make their plans, just like brothers and sisters, Balak hired Balaam to curse the children of Israel, so do they hire these witches of today to try to curse the house of Israel. But the Most High brings it back upon them. All you got to do is type in opioid crisis in the Midwest. And all you got to do is look at what happened in Harlem in a movie and what they call Across 110th Street. That crack ravished Harlem. You understand? Wagner projects on the east side. Grant projects on Amsterdam going toward the west side of Harlem. That is to say, from 122nd and 1st Avenue in New York City, all the way, brothers and sisters, to 129th in Amsterdam. For those who know Harlem, you know that's a great distance. Crack ravished the people. You understand? Women were selling their bodies left and right just to get that fix. And now all you got to do is see what's going on with the plagues upon our enemies. The Most High has released his sword upon them, just like the plagues in ancient Egypt. You understand? This is not a God that sleeps, brothers and sisters. Shabbat is over, but the Most High is still alive. The Most High is not a sabbatical God. where he only dwells concerning Shabbat. You understand? The Most High doesn't operate like that. He created the Shabbat, and every other day he made as well. You understand? The difference is with Shabbat or Sabbath, it's a day sanctified. But believe, brothers and sisters, just like that Egypt caught it, so is this Egypt here going to catch it. So here we see the guy Akhenaten with the rays of the sun coming down, and the Aten of ancient Egypt is what they refer to as the physical sun, and he is pouring and paying libations with him and his daughter and the rest of his family there, offering libations to the sun, which is against the culture of Israel. We don't pour things out to the sun. See how the cultures between the two are different? From the priesthood on down to the kingship. Next slide. The idea that some, such as Dr. Ben and Clark have, of the Hebrews not being in Egypt is incorrect. First, let us understand that Egypt is a country, not a continent. Egypt belongs to Africa, not Africa to Egypt. Egyptians were Africans, but not all Africans were Egyptian. Next slide. The English word Egypt was from the Greek form Egyptos, which was borrowed from the Egyptian word Hukapta, which in Egyptian means the soul of Ptah. Ptah was an Egyptian god. The ancient Egyptian name for the country was Kemet, which means black land, due to the alluvial deposits from the Nile, and the word Deshret referred to the red land, which is the desert. Next slide. Another name for Egypt was Tameri, meaning land of the riverbank. The names of Upper and Lower Egypt were Tash Shmal, meaning sedge land, and Temehu, meaning northland. The ancient Egyptians called Egypt Mizraim, as stated in other notes. The word Tawi in Egyptian refers to the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. We explained this in another video, which I could put as far as the editing goes, a recommended video on why is Mizraim not translated as Egypt correctly. Next slide. To this day, there are blacks in Ethiopia and other countries in the continent of Africa that say they are Israelites. Quote, the Falasha Jews, for instance, are an example of such. They were not taught what they do from Islam or Christianity. Thus, the idea of the Torah being observed in any country in Africa is due to colonialisms and imperialisms is incorrect. You know what that proves? That the modern video that's going out now talking about the Ashkenazi Jews set up, quote unquote, the black Hebrew Israelites is not a fact. There's a video going around inside of conscious community, quote unquote, land that the Ashkenazi Jews and the Rothschild family is the reason why you see, quote unquote, the black Israelites of today. That's not true. And the point in me mentioning the so-called Falashas, having met some of them in person, I met people from the so-called Falashas who call themselves Beit Yisrael. Some of the guys I met there were cool. Some of the guys I met there are some of the most arrogant that I could have ever met in my life. I'm like, what's wrong with this dude? All right, maybe he got a chip on his shoulder, whatever. But getting back to the point here, they were not taught what they do from Islam or Christianity. Thus, the idea of the Torah being observed in any country in Africa is due to colonialism and imperialism is incorrect. Read Valley of the Dry Bones by Root of Windsor for a discussion on the Falashas in Ethiopia. Next slide. For a place such as Ethiopia to have Israelites from Israel shows that in their travel, they had to pass Egypt. For a direct reference about Hebrews in Egypt, refer to the Brooklyn Papyrus of the 13th dynasty of Egypt, as well as the Passover Papyrus of the era during the Persian rule over Egypt in the 27th to 28th dynasties. You see what that's called? Citations. That's part of homework. So people can look things up themselves. See, you can take this part right here and write down Brooklyn Papyrus 13th dynasty. You can write down Passover, what Passover? Passover papyrus from the era of the Persian rule over Egypt. So Israel, they want Israelites keeping the holy days outside of the land. Okay, that's another subject. Conscious community. How in the world, as asked before, are you giving up the land of the Levant to the Europeans? Who paid you? After you said the Middle East is really part of Africa. It's part of Africa and Israel's in the Middle East. Then wouldn't that be part of Africa? And you say we Africans, then wouldn't that be ours? See what happens? See, in the book of Isaiah, the Most High said he turns wise men backwards and maketh their knowledge foolish. Who frustrates the tokens of imposters. Because see, Yisrael Yashub, because Israel will return. I ain't get an answer from Sinetta channel yet. Why in the world are y'all giving up that part of Africa after you said we Israelites are wrong for saying we're not Africans? You're saying that the land of Israel is truly in Africa. We're saying the land of Israel is truly ours, but yet you say no, it belongs to the European Jews. Who paid you to sit there and do that? Somebody did, somewhere. You understand? We're citing citations. Look this stuff up. Next slide. The Amu is an Egyptian term. The Amu is an Egyptian term meaning Asiatic. The term Hyksos is a term that the Greeks invented for the rulers of Egypt during the 15th and 16th dynasties. The 17th century BCE saw two different dynasties in Egypt. The 15th dynasty, which is the Hyksos rule, and their vassals, which was the 16th dynasty. So I want to point this out. In Egypt, dynasty 15 and 16 were concurrent. All right. So and the terminology, as Haiku Shoswet said later on, as Hyksos by the Greeks, right? They were not Greeks. They were just called that by the Greeks. You understand? Next slide. Some state that as many as 60 or more princes or vassals ruled in the 16th dynasty. The Amun were recorded by Egyptians as legitimate rulers, but no tombs of these half dozen rulers exist and their names are non-Egyptian. In the note I made entitled The Hebrew and Pharaoh Connection, discuss the issue of Asiatics being seen in Egypt in the tomb of Kemunhotep of the 12th dynasty of Egypt, and which is referred to now as Beni Hassan. All right, so let's go in. The reason why not much is mentioned about the Amu in Egypt is because when the Hyksos were driven out by the Egyptians attempted to erase their memory from Egypt. This was not uncommon in the culture of Egypt. The Egyptians doing this caused the memory of the Hebrews and the children of Israel to be erased as having ever been in Egypt. For instance, I am in New York. Well, currently I'm in North Carolina, but I live in New York. And until I studied raw history, I did not know that New York used to be called New Amsterdam, and before that, it was called Canarsie by the quote Indians who lived in what is now Brooklyn. Changing the name and hiding to the best of one's ability is a sure way to have a people erased from history. Now, let me bring this up to what's going on. Isn't that what we do when we break up in a relationship? Scratch their number out the phone and their name. Or if there's a breakup, you change their name in the phone to, like, not to get sidetracked. When me and the sister broke up, I changed her name in the phone to Dodo, D-O-D-O. And I remember seeing text messages from Dodo. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. I changed her name in it. That was my way of erasing her from my memory. So did the ancient Egyptians do with certain things in their own records. Somebody asks, was not the same thing done to Hatshepsut? Yes. Thutmose III tried his best to erase the memory of Hatshepsut. Yes, my sister Mika, I did that. I changed a sister's name in my phone to Dodo, so therefore I would sit there and comfortably have her erased from my memory. You understand? I can only imagine the name she called me in her phone, but we're going to move on from that. You understand? So the point I'm saying is changing the name of a land or a people after they're not around and so forth is done in history and it's done currently. All right, next slide. The accomplishments of the Hyksos / the Amu people in Egypt shows them what is referred to as the Rhind Papyrus. You can look that up. The astronomical, mathematical, and the use of the horse and chariot. The Sumerians, whose writing is older than that of Egypt, knew what the Amu taught the people of Tameri. Now, I want to emphasize and circle something, all right? People have stated, all right, I want to change the color of this to black. People have stated that when I spelt it as Tomeri or Tameri there, that it's wrong. And that is supposed to be T A apostrophe M E R I. So even though Tom spells Tom in English, and you're still saying Tameri, there is no correct English spelling when the word itself is not English. I'm not playing games with this kind of aspect because I have seen the spelling of Kemet as Kemet. I've seen the spelling of Kemet, brothers and sisters, as Kem. I meant to put Y. I've seen it as Kemet, and I've seen it as Kemyt. So I'm not going back and forth. You know what in the world I'm talking about when I said Tomeri. I'm not going with always the standard English spelling of something when you know good and well what's being spoken about. All right, next slide. The Egyptians referred to their slaves as apiru, and they existed in Egypt before and after the time of the Israelite Exodus. The Israelites leaving Egypt with a mixed multitude is not far-fetched. The Egyptians have what they call the YHW of the Shasu. The word Shasu comes from the Egyptian word meaning those who move on foot. Who is YHW but YHWH? And who moved on foot but Israel when leaving Egypt? That's something to research. The ancient Egyptians did not claim to teach the Hebrews anything. The Egyptians were a great kingdom, and anyone who says otherwise is a liar. However, we see that the children of Israel have been lied on by some. When Egypt does not work, then some revert to Africa. Because that's the game played. Egypt Kemet, Egypt Kemet, Egypt Kemet. Simatawi, Egypt Kemet, I am Hatshepsut, I am Ramses. I tell you who you are. You're the person that endorsed the guy Theodore who went into the Egyptian tombs. You're the person that the guy Sobekimsaf would have had locked up for raiding the Egyptian tombs. So stop asking Israelites, where is your dead bodies? Where's your dead? That's how you know they got a dead culture, because that's what they're seeking. Where's your dead bodies? What are you, a vampire in nature? Why would you, like, if somebody would have asked me to show them my dead mother or my granddad, I would be kind of offended. Like, really, B? That's what you want to see? Let me explain how these people are not into the saying of they are the true people of that land of Egypt. I am existence of my father. Did you know that? That's why when we say like you are what your father is, you are evidence of your parents. Did you know that? You are evidence of your parents. So we are evidence that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob existed because we are their children. So when they're saying, oh, you need to sit there and show the tomb and show that, when it was against both the Israelites and the Egyptian culture to dig up the dead. That's why the guy by the name of Thutmose the first built what they call the Valley of the Kings. And he was taking the pharaohs from the Middle Kingdom and the Old Kingdom out of the pyramids, and Thutmose the first was putting them in what they call the Valley of the Kings. Why? Because the ancient Egyptians were going inside of the pyramids and raiding them, which was against the culture of the ancient Egyptians. So you may want to look up, if you want to, why was the Valley of the Kings built by Thutmose the first? It was to prevent Egyptians from robbing the tombs. So when people want to sit there and say, well, when you get into the matter and you study it and so forth and so on, you have it to where we need to sit there and see the dead. Use a sick dude to sit there and ask somebody to show where the dead is at. You understand? Next slide. In concluding this subject, it is important to mention two things. Let us mention the fact that either an 18th dynasty pharaoh named Amenhotep III or a 19th dynasty pharaoh named Merneptah mentioned Israel. Israel is Israel in what is referred to as the Merneptah stele. The phrase reads as follows: Israel is wasted bare of seed. This shows that the Israelites were mentioned by ancient Egyptians. The above means nothing to Israelites, but it is a way to show that when the Pharaoh mentions some of his enemies in southern Canaan, we see that Yisrael is mentioned. Let's go. Some say that the Israel on the stela is not Israel, but the fact remains that the L, the letter was written with the Egyptian R, as in the case of the Merneptah stele and the city that Shishak, referred to as Shishak in the Bible, spoke of on the walls of Karnak. Also, as stated in other notes concerning the Epira papyrus, we see that Epira stated that indeed scribes are killed and their writings are taken away. Woe is me because of the misery of this time. The above sentence was said by Epira in his papyrus concerning the plagues that came or which came on Egypt. The Epira papyrus distinctly says that scribes' writings were taken away. What was Egypt trying to hide? Read the Epira papyrus, you'll see it. Scribes are killed and their writings are taken away. But yet the conscious Kemetic community will tell you and I, ancient Egyptians were careful writers of their records. Who is to say the ancient Egyptians were careful writers of their records? We don't even say that as Israelites about the Israelite scribes. Why do you think in the Tanakh in the Old Testament, I'm Old Testament based for those who may have not known. Why do you think in the Tanakh it says, is it not written about the wars of the Lord in the book of Numbers? Why do you think it talks about the book of the prophet Gad, the book of the prophet Edo, the book of the Joshua, the book of this and the book of that? Why do you think it's mentioned that? There are certain books that's not even in the scriptures of ancient Israel that we currently have. We don't have all the records, but the Kemetic community will tell you straight up and down that we have all the records from ancient Egypt because they were careful writers of their records. Yet one of their known records dated to the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. It says distinctly, scribes are killed and their writings are taken away. So what were they trying to hide? What was I trying to hide by changing the sister name in my phone to Dodo? What was that sister probably trying to hide for whatever name she called me in her phone? Next slide. Now, We spoke on the Meneptah stele and so forth and so on, right? So let's look at this particular part right here. You have the Y, Is, the S, R, the I, the A, and the R. Now, I want to point this out, brothers and sisters, and I'm going to try to use the highlighter. If I do, I'm going to have to make it a different color. Let's see if this will work. And that didn't work. I don't know what I'll do. I'll circle it. What you see circled there in the black in Egyptian represents Y. All right? What you see, brothers and sisters, circled here represents S. All right? Yeah, I believe it's line 27 also, Joel speaks. Yeah, I believe that's the line. Thank you for that, brother. What you're looking at right here in the green is R. Because we kind of want to color code this. What you're looking at right here, brothers and sisters, in the red, hey, what we're looking at right here, all right, in the red, all right, is I. And what we're looking at right here in this blue, all right, is A. And we want to use the same color green, all right, for this R here. That's from the Meneptah stele. Now, there are some people saying that Meneptah actually got that stele from a pharaoh before him, but that's not the main point of this presentation. The point of this is inside of the Egyptian records, certainly dated, they say, some say 700 something BCE, some people say 1200 something BCE. Regardless of that particular aspect, right? Not doing the timeline matter of dealing with linguistics in this regard. YSRIAR, Israel. Israel, right? All right, let me deal with the timeline real quick. All right, to the brother or the sister, oh, pardon me, brother, Ben Dora, that's a brother. I apologize. To the brother who put in by saying 1205 BCE. The reason why some scholars wonder about that timeline with the Meneptah thing is because of what they call the intermediate periods of ancient Egypt. Because they deal in many cases with the aspect of Meneptah in the writing of Pharaoh here, Pharaoh here, Pharaoh here, and Pharaoh there, the timeline of ancient Egypt has been pushed back. Whereas some of them were co-regent. So you had, let's say, for instance, two pharaohs of Dynasty 12 ruling at the same time. But when you look at certain records, like the Meneptah aspect, they don't have the respected order of co-regencies where pharaohs ruled at the same time. They have it to where one is above the other. So the timeline, certainly when you deal with what they call the first, second, and intermediate period, push back. That's why some wonder about the 1205 BCE date for Meneptah. I just wanted to point that out. So now getting back into this particular aspect, right? You have the YSRIAR. It's rare. Now, we're going to sit there and color code. All right, I want to address that. Somebody stated, heard Josephus said Manetho is a liar. Now, I cite Josephus periodically, right? And he's a historian. I'm not on his level, but I'm credited as a historian. I don't agree with everything else that other historians write. But why would Josephus say that Manetho is a liar, which he did say, by the way? He would say that because the house of Yisrael, to which Josephus belonged to, and the behind kissing that Manetho was dealing with the aspect of acquiescing to the Europeans, is why he might have sat there and said that. You understand? So hopefully that's understood as far as Josephus saying Manetho is a liar. Because from what I've read, a lot of the records from Manetho were not even currently or is not currently known today. But the timeline that many people citing Manetho's record, you understand? It doesn't give the respect of co-regencies with kings. Just as the fact of saying that King Uzziah and King Yotam, his son, ruled at the same time for a certain amount of time. You know? So that's what as far as it goes with that. Now, with this particular thing right here, I want to color code this. Let's say purple. I'm put a line so you can see what I'm talking about. That right there represents a man inside of the Egyptian culture. That means that whoever this is here, this Israel, is a man, a symbol of a people. It's not a religion. The ancient Egyptians, whether you say it's Amenhotep still or Meneptah still, when speaking of these part of the Chabiru called Yisrael in this, which we understand as Yisrael, right? It's not a religion. Oh, we don't deal with the Hebrew Israelite religion. Hebrews were a people. Dr. Clark said that the Hebrews had no culture before they came into Egypt. Then when they left, they went to the land of Israel. Then, by changing it from the land of Canaan to the land of Israel, they by default, quote, wrote themselves into history. But to say certain things, Dr. Clark, may he rest in peace, he was a historian. I'm not even like, I've taught in the college, but not on the level that he has. But I would say certain things that Dr. Clark stated to the brother who wrote in, heard Josephus say Manetho is a liar. I would say certain things that Dr. Clark said is a straight up lie, such as saying the Hebrews had no culture, because Joseph, one of the first known Hebrews in there, was like, I'm not sleeping with Potiphar's wife. I'm not doing that. Aswa Crazy tried to point out by saying, oh, well, you know, they would have gotten that story and wrote it on paper from stones. You don't need paper or stone to know if a woman is going to be a whore. Potiphar's wife was a whore. Joseph did not sleep with her. And this is why we as Israelites, you find a lot of Israelites named Joseph or Yosef or so forth. Because we are taking on the names and the characters of our ancestors. You don't find Israelites named Dathan and Abiram. You don't find Israelite women named Vashti, for instance. You understand? You don't find Israelite women, you understand, named, for instance, Jezebel. You're just throwing that out there. You understand? Joseph knew not to sleep with Potiphar's wife. So when Dr. Clark stated that the Hebrews didn't have any culture, why would Joseph not sleep with Potiphar's wife? That's part of his culture. Lo tin af. Thou shalt not commit adultery. We knew that already. You got people who don't even understand English or Hebrew. You got illiterate people who still know not to sit there and sleep with another man's wife. You understand? So these are things we want to point out for edification purposes. Somebody asks, how can they write themselves in history for themselves when the Egyptians wrote about the Israelites in the Menaphtah still? LOL. Well, what happened with that is, you won't, correct me if I'm wrong, find the videos with Dr. Clark or Dr. Ben. Mind you, Dr. Ben, his whole name is Hebrew. Yosef Ben Yochanan. Yosef is Joseph from the root word Yasaf, which means to add. Ben is son from the root word Banah, which means to build, because with a son you are building. And Yochanan, which means God is gracious. Canaan means gracious. Joseph Ben Yochanan, who hated the Bible, had a Hebrew name. But you know what happens? Like on Not to Be Funny on this channel, you get 400 or 500 subscribers. You get most in maybe a year, 300 views. But when you teaching about men of ancient Egypt with the penis on the wall, you get all kinds of thousands of views because you get more money coming into that. You get more popularity coming into that. So they're not going to talk about them in Menaphtah still. They're not going to talk about the aspect of Pharaoh Shishak and the wall of Karnak, where the biblical names are mentioned, such as Megiddo, such as Ta'naak, and so forth and so on. They're not going to talk about that. They're not going to mention the Passover papyrus. They're not going to mention the Elephantine papyrus. Ashwa Crazy did a video called, end quote, Judaism, the stolen religion out of Africa. And in that video, Ashwa Crazy cited James Breasted. James Breasted is the person in the 20th century who is noted for finding what they call the Elephantine papyrus. The Elephantine papyrus, brothers and sisters, is about the Israelites during the era of the Persian rule over Egypt that was living and worshiping Yahoo. YHW. YHU. The Most High. These are things we want to talk about. They don't talk about, as stated, the Elephantine papyrus, the Passover papyrus, the Harris papyrus. Because you know why? The Harris papyrus goes into the aspect of Egyptians being slave masters. It goes into the aspect of the Asiatics, aka the Amu, being in the land of Egypt in the Middle Kingdom. That's why they don't go into history in that regard. They go into the aspect of talking about, I can levitate and I have my chakras and we'll pimp Kemet as much as we have to. That's the point, brother. You're saying Israel is Northeast Africa, LOL. So how can it be stolen from Africa? It's because, I don't know if you heard this presented earlier, right? I agree. Israel, the land, is in Northeast Africa. So why did Chancellor Williams, in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, say that the Jews of old, as in the biblical times, were white? Why did J.A. Rogers, in his book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, say that the characters of the Bible are largely Negroes? J.A. Rogers, Joel L. Rogers, in his book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, stated what? The characters of the Bible are largely Negroes. So why did Chancellor Williams say that the Jews of old in the Bible were white? Because somebody paid somebody. That's why. It's the same reason why at a job, I was doing a custodian's job. I'm the security, but I'm doing a custodian's job. This is real life. Why? Because they provided me with free lunch. they provided me with free movie tickets. So yeah, custodian, I have my price. I will mop this floor because when I was with my daughter's mom, I'm getting free tickets to take her to the movies. Everybody, not to sound like a whore, has their price. Well, apparently, they had their price to get their book out. So they couldn't talk about the children of Israel being black. You understand? Just like when I was at a job and the custodians didn't want to do their job, so they said, we will give you free movie tickets and we will give you free lunch every day. I said, make sure the lunch that you're getting comes from this place because I can't eat off of every spoon. Those custodians couldn't care just as long as they can stay downstairs and watch the TV. I was there cleaning the windows and mopping the floor. I went into that job a half hour earlier from Monday to Friday so I could do the custodian's job. Why? Because we had one hand washing the other. So I'm getting free movie tickets for me and my daughter's mother. I'm getting free lunches. That's less money I got to spend. So yes, I will mop the floor and clean the window. So I got to ask the conscious community, just as much as the movie tickets and the free lunch was the price for me to do their job, who paid you? What are you getting out of the deal to say that a land in Northeast Africa belongs to the white man? Let's go on to the next slide. Now, what we're looking at right here, right? And I want to sit there and what you see there in the purple, and I want to highlight this, right? I'm gonna try to highlight this in white. Okay, that didn't work. I'm going to try to highlight this in light blue. Right? Yes, we actually went over to Tacitus, brother, earlier in this presentation. Yeah, we went over that. Thank you for that comment. Now you see right there, brothers and sisters, the Yod, Sin, Resh, Aleph, Lamed, Yisrael. That's from the Danite stele. All right? Okay? Yes, it is. Tell then still, yes. Somebody has been studying. Brother Joel, yes, that is the Danite stele. And I know we're going to work on this penmanship. All right? Danite stele. This is dated to the 9th century BCE. Can you find any Hebrew artifact before Herod? You know Herod of Esau, the Idumean? Idumea is Edom. That's how you know who's friends with who. Just like everybody's pointing out. Who you can't talk about is who's in control. Now, I'm assuming majority of the people in the sound of the voice here are black people. From what I looked online at the analytical aspect of the videos, there's more male listeners than female listeners. You can tell on YouTube the gender of the people that listen to your videos, right? So I looked it up and there's more males than females. So I'm gonna adjust the brothers on this. Our mothers, you knew when to shut up in front of mommy. I knew I did. You understand? The open hand slap for mommy was enough. I didn't want the backhand. So I knew there was a time to not speak when you know that you're right and you know that your mother, who is due honor according to the word of the Most High, not saying she's wrong, but saying that she's incorrect in this particular aspect about what happened. Sometimes as sons, we just had to eat that. Am I lying? You know good and well you're not wrong. But because your parents said you're wrong, you just be like, it is what it is. I'm going to just eat that. Honor thy father and thy mother. What? I'll slap you in the middle of next week. No problem, mommy. I don't want to see the middle of next week. I want to see night and day and go back and forth and so forth. Because see, may my mother rest in peace, right? She's the kind of person that would sit there, and anybody knows Brooklyn, would be on Nostrand Avenue and Avenue D. I said, be quiet, I'm talking. And I'll just have to sit there, stand there, and just be like, okay. And I had to, quote, eat that, as the saying goes. And I know I wasn't wrong all the time. You understand? So the point I'm saying is this. Everyone knows who you don't raise up against, such as your parents. So now when Gil Noble on his show, Like It Is, in the 1980s, Gil Noble had a show called Like It Is, and the Israelite leaders were not allowed to go on the show. Did you know that? Did you know that Gil Noble in the 1980s was not allowed to have the Israelites to go on his show to tell like it is about us being the true Israelites? They were told you have to speak about being a black Jew. And that is to say that there will be evidence of a white Jew. And the teachers were like, I'm not going for that. We are the true Israelites. We're called black as a byword, Deuteronomy 28, but our skin tone is brown. Gil Noble told the Israelite teachers, in order to be on his show Like It Is, you would have to say that you are a black Jew. You cannot go on there saying you are an Israelite. In a debate that Ashwa Kwesi had with a Christian, he said that the quote unquote African Hebrews wrote the Septuagint. He couldn't say the Israelites that came out of the tribe of Levi wrote it. He couldn't say the people of Judah or the people of the tribe of Judah wrote it. The African Hebrews. Yeah, we know Africa. You can say it. It makes it sound connected. We know we're Hebrews. But it's something with that word Israelite. No. Why you think when we was going over with Societas earlier, he said the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. They wanted to, as it says in Psalm 83, cause the name of Israel to be no more in remembrance. You understand? How not to be sounding like one is hating? How is Jesse Summit, the sodomite and a liar? How is he getting more views online than when we go online, sitting up here talking about the black man needs to step up? And then the black woman will respect the black man. Israelites been saying that for a minute. I was just on Facebook and there was somebody that went live. I'm what you call Old Testament based, right? There's a split from the school that's messianic that came from 1 West 125th Street. And they was teaching in the street, right? Earlier today. That video will not get more views while they was telling people you need to repent. That video is not going to get more views than the Jesse Summit, the sodomite liar. The Apocrypha says, folly is set in great dignity. This is why I'm in North Carolina now, but this is why in New York, you see 42nd Street, Times Square, looking like it does, like a big playpen for kids. Folly is set in great dignity. You understand? That's why Disneyland looks the way that it does, because folly is set in great dignity. All right? So this is something, brothers and sisters, that we want to point out for edification purposes. Yisrael seen there, the Danite steel, right? And this is the same Manetha steel, right? So that's what we want to point out. You can't quote bash the Jews without getting in trouble. That's why, though I'm not Muslim, that's why Khalid Muhammad got in trouble. And Farrakhan suspended him when he did his speech years ago in what they call King College. Because Khalid Muhammad said so-called Jews. Farrakhan had to sit there and, oh, no, no, no. You know who controls who by how they respond. Talk against somebody's mother, that's a punch in the face because mommy controls her sons. So if you disrespect what controls you, you got to just go all out. You understand? So, all right. The Rayahu, call me when you get the chance. 908-587-4841. I gotta go back to New York. But call me, Dariah. Call me tomorrow night. All right, so we could talk about what you just said. Now, getting back into this, I just wanted to show that Israel is mentioned inside of a record. Let's go on to the next slide. Now, this right here is the same thing shown more. I wanted to show as clear as possible. All right. All right. So now looking at this right here, and then we got highlighter Yo Sin Rish Aleph Lame. All right. I'm trying to make that as clear as possible with that. This was found, brothers and sisters, in 1994. So the book called Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in Ancient Days by a guy named Redford, he said there was no evidence of David outside of the Bible. Even though there are people on this earth that they claim to be in the seed of David. You understand? So this is something we want to point out in that particular regard. All right. If you see, as pointed out here, Dawid, because we don't, we'll talk one day about what they refer to as Lashon Kodash, but what you see here, the Da, Wow, and the Dalit, right? Dawid or David in the transliteration, it comes from the root word Hadad, which means to be loved. All right. So with that particular case, that's what we want to point out in that particular regard. Then we have the word Beit, which means house of David. And then we have, all right, I want to take the pen, the Mem, the Lamed, and the Kaf. As we see here, brothers and sisters, I want to highlight this particular aspect in green. This is Melech Yisrael, house of David, king of Yisrael, king of Yisrael, the house of David. So this was found as stated in 1994. So it's not that hard to figure out what's being spoken about. All right. Any questions? Next slide. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11 through 12 explain. Now, Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11 through 12. Deuteronomy 28. There's a reason why I'm going here. Because as Israelites, there are some who are teaching that the northern kingdom of Israel stayed in the east. And we over here in the Western Hemisphere is only the southern kingdom, namely Judah. And that's the point in this particular presentation. So I'm going to ask the people to get your books, Bibles, pens, and paper, because we're going to go in upon this particular subject. All right? I'll be right back in 30 seconds. Any questions or comments? Feel free to write it in there. Thank you. Okay, we're back. All right. So let's look at this here. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11. And it says the following. Did we get our book for edification purposes? Because I wasn't printing all of that out or copying and pasting all of that. This is something that we want to present in which people get your pens, your pads, your paper, so we can go in and explain our book in regards to what it says concerning us. All right? This is the part that's called Yisrael Yashub, which means Israel will return. Isaiah 11, verse 11. And it says this: And it shall come to pass in that day that Yah shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcast of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Now, let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. All right? I'm going to ask, brothers and sisters, for us to go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64. And it says this, brothers and sisters. Turn too much pages. And it says the following. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. That's Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64. Now, question I asked is, who is that prophecy talking about in Deuteronomy 28, 64? Can anybody that's listening, I would say that that's talking about Israel, the Israelites. Deuteronomy 28, verse 64 is talking about who? Can anybody in the comments sit there and state what they understand that's talking about? Okay, somebody wrote all 12 tribes, right? I agree. So now, if we're going with the premise that Deuteronomy 28:64 is talking about all 12 tribes, let's remember that, right? Somebody wrote the descendants of Israel. I agree. Let's go to Exodus chapter 6, verse 2, as shown there in the slide, right? Exodus chapter 6. I deliberately didn't like go into the King James Version online and copy and paste it because I'm asking people, get your pens, your pads, your books, and we're going to go step by step by step. Okay. And I think whoever put the dislike, so be it. We are in, brothers and sisters, the book of Exodus chapter 6, brothers and sisters. And we are in verse 2. And God spoke unto Moses and said unto him, I am the Lord. And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob by the name El Shaddai. But by name Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh was I not known to them. And I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. And I have also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. Wherefore say unto the children of Israel. Now in Exodus chapter 6, verse 6, who is that talking about? When it says, wherefore say unto the children of Israel, it's the Israelites, all the 12 tribes. I am Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will rid you of their bondage, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm and with great judgments. That's the plagues. And I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you a Elohim, a God. And you shall know that I am Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh Eloheka, the Lord your God, which bringeth you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. So, brothers and sisters, what are we seeing right here? That the Most High in Exodus 6 is saying that he is going to take Israel to be a people unto him. Right? So, with that being said, let's now go to Exodus chapter 5, verse 1, so we can gain for edification purposes. Right? And here is what we read, brothers and sisters. Exodus chapter 5 and verse 1. Which, for whatever reason, and this is stuck together. Here we go. And it says the following. And afterward Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. In Exodus chapter 5, it says, let my people go. Why is that important? To go and show where Israel was called the people of the Most High. Where, brothers and sisters, it says in Exodus that the Most High would take Israel as a people to himself. Because when we go back to Isaiah, all right, chapter 11, for edification purposes, all right, here is what we read again. Isaiah 11, verse 11. It says, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people. So who is the people of the Most High? According to the first time they were redeemed, was all the 12 tribes. See, his people didn't change from being all 12 tribes to just being the kingdom of Judah. You understand? So this is what we want to point out. by when it says the Most High will set his hand again the second time. Because the first time is what we were just reading in Exodus chapter 6, right? Okay, so now with that, let's go to Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 15, so we can gain some understanding of what we're talking about. The prophet Jeremiah chapter 5:15 says this: Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. It is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation, a nation whose language thou knowest not, neither understandest what they say. Their quiver is an open sepulchre. They are all mighty men, and they shall eat up thine harvest and thy bread, which thy sons and thy daughters should eat. And they shall eat up thy flocks and thy herds, and they shall eat up thy vines and thy fig trees. They shall impoverish thy fenced cities, wherein thou trustest with the sword. Nevertheless, in those days, saith the Lord, I will not make a full end of you. And it shall come to pass, when ye shall say, Wherefore hath the Lord our God, wherefore doeth the Lord our God all these things unto us? That ye shall answer them, like as ye have forsaken me, and serve strange gods in your land. So shall ye serve strangers in a land that's not yours. What's the point of going over that? It says in verse 19, the Lord our God. Israel in Jeremiah here is said that they will claim the Creator as the Lord their God. So in Exodus, when it says that I will be a God to you, O house of Israel, the God of Israel is the God of Israel. The people of Israel are the people of the Most High God. So this is what we want to point out in that particular regard, right? Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 26, so we can see this. Jeremiah 6:26. O daughter of my people, gird thee with sackcloth and wallow thyself in ashes. Make thee mourning as for an only son, most bitter lamentation, for the spoiler has suddenly come upon us. O daughter of my people. There's a couple of things we could take out of that. The position that we are as a people, brothers and sisters. As a mother mourns her only son. You know that shooting that happened in Pittsburgh with the cop? You know, they said that that guy, who's the cop, brothers and sisters, is not going to face charges. They decided that just this weekend over in Pittsburgh. So now they're protesting in Pittsburgh. Who knows the blues, as the saying goes, unlike us? Nobody knows it like we do. See, when Israel was separated from the nations, that has its good and that has its sad part, because nobody knows the trouble we've seen either. You understand? Let's go to 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 25. 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 25, and it says this. And they transgressed against the God of their fathers, and went a whoring after the gods of the people of the land, whom God destroyed before them. And the God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria, and the spirit of Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, and he carried them away, even the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, and brought them unto Halah and Habor and Harah, and into the river of Gozan unto this day. Now, earlier in this video, we went over the aspect of Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben being on the east side of the Jordan. They were the first of the tribes to be taken into captivity under the Assyrians. So we can begin to see what this is talking about, all right? Let's go, if you will, 2 Kings chapter 17. 2 Kings 17, verse 1, so we can gain an understanding of what we're talking about. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hosea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hosea became his servant and brought him presents. The presents today that we bringing up to the kings now is called rent and taxes and mortgage. That's the presents that we bringing up in these days and times. Now let's go to 2 Kings 18, verse 13. All right. Hosea in 2 Kings 17 was king over the northern tribes. 18, verse 13. Now in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, come up against all the fenced cities of Judah and took them. So Judah was also taken into the Assyrian captivity. And I want to point this out, brothers and sisters, and I want this part here, all right, to be highlighted, if we will. 2 Kings 18, verse 13. All right, we want that to be noted. Matter of fact, we're going to circle this one. So people are going to remember, hopefully, 2 Kings 18:13, because Judah, brothers and sisters, was taken into the Assyrian captivity. What does this prove? And I don't mean any disrespect, is that the 12-tribe chart that circulates is premised on Judah, the southern kingdom, only in Babylon, and Israel, the northern kingdom, only in Assyria. Yet we see right here in the scriptures in 2 Kings 18:13 that Judah was captured also by the Assyrians. All right, so now let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 32, if we will. 2 Chronicles chapter 32, brothers and sisters. And it says this, 32 verse 7. Second Chronicles 32 verse 7, and it reads as follows. This is Hezekiah speaking to the people of Judah. Here's what he had to say. Be strong and courageous. Be not afraid nor dismayed for the king of Assyria, nor for the multitude that is with him. For there is more with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is Yah Eloheinu, the Lord our God, to help us and to fight our battles. And the people rested themselves upon the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. After this, did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, send his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish, and all his power with him, unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, and to all Judah that were at Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith Sennacherib, king of Assyria, whereon do ye trust that ye abide in the siege of Jerusalem? So they did besiege the land of Judah. And as we read there, they took the city of Lachish. Now, we shown the images of the people of Lachish in the past, right? Good. Now, brothers and sisters, let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 30, verse 25. And it says this. And all the congregation of Judah, and the priests, and the Levites, and all the congregation that came out of Israel, and the strangers that were out of the land of Israel, and that dwelt in Judah, rejoiced. What was the point in that? This right here goes to show that there were those that came out of Israel that was in Judah. Now, when it says the strangers, remember, you had the Samaritans that were placed in the land of Israel by the Assyrian kings. You understand? So you had the Samaritans as well as natural Israel inside of the land of Judah, according to what we just read there. That's why we want to take it part upon part upon part. So what's going on? Ahaz is the father of Hezekiah. Ahaz was the king of Judah when Hoshea was taken as captive by the Assyrians. Right? Hoshea was the king of the northern tribes. We read about Lachish of Judah being besieged and taken captive by the Assyrians. Right? That's why when you look at this PowerPoint right here, brothers and sisters, going to the laser point, when it says Assyrian Empire and Assyrian Empire, that's the point of that. See where the laser is at when it says Judah? Judah was taken over during the era of 701 BCE. Yes, Ahaz was a Judite, and Hoshea was from the northern tribes. Now, Ahaz was the 12th descendant of King David, right? We pointed out that you are evidence of your own father. So in Isaiah chapter 7, when it says, when Isaiah is speaking to Ahaz in Isaiah chapter 7, and it says, O house of David, we explained earlier that by having a son, you are building, because Ben means son from the root word bana, which means to build. So by having a son, you are building. So the house of David is built by the sons of David. You understand? There will never be no archaeology talking about the house of David or biblical after the death of David if David did not exist. You understand? So these people who go with these videos talking about, oh, King David and Solomon never existed. How then do you find Ahaz, who is of the house of David, a descendant of David, mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser? What, brothers and sisters, is the Danite still talking about? These are things they don't talk about. Like they don't talk about the Imperial Papyrus, they don't talk about the Danite stele. But they swear Israelites can prove nothing outside of just dealing with the Bible. What you need to do is get off of Facebook and begin to read books yourself so you can gain some for edification purposes. Ahaz is mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser. Hezekiah is mentioned by Sennacherib. Not too hard to figure out what's going on. Sennacherib of Assyria mentions Hezekiah of Judah. And the biblical record of Israel and Judah being defeated is also mentioned by the Assyrians. All right? So now, let's look at this. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 46, verse 1. All right? We are in the prophet Jeremiah 46, verse 1, for edification purposes. All right? I remember one time, the people with the Kemetic community, you know, at one time, brothers and sisters, they said that Nebuchadnezzar never existed. Do you realize how many artifacts is found in Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar's name on it? Yeah, they said that one time. That Nebuchadnezzar, the biblical character, he never existed. That's just straight up ignorance. Let's go on. Jeremiah chapter 46, verse 1. The word of Yah, which came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning the Gentiles, concerning Egypt, against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, of the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Brothers and sisters, Carchemish battle is mentioned inside of Babylonian records. So let's go on, brothers and sisters. The battle of Carchemish in the 7th century BCE is mentioned inside of Babylonian records, just like we just read in Jeremiah about Carchemish. This is the same battle that you see in the book of 2 Kings 24, verse 7. Right? So, no, the actual thing when we just read about Pharaoh Necho, that was Dynasty 26 of Egypt. I wanted to point that out, all right? That's Dynasty 26 of Egypt, pardon. All right? So we can gain some understanding for edification purposes regarding that. All right? Are there any questions or comments concerning this kind of subject? I like the dialogue, actually, to be quite candid. All right? All righty. I had to set something back up on my computer. Sorry about that. So now, brothers and sisters, once it comes down to that, right? When we get into this particular subject, we want to continue on where we were at, right? And that's this. Necho that we just read in Jeremiah chapter 46, right, is Dynasty 26. I really, to be candid, Brother Joel, I don't do debates. These are presentations. So whoever cares to debate who, each man got to sit there and look at what they're presenting to the people later on. You know, no disrespect intended to anyone once it comes down to that. But if anybody is up there going to sit there and say that the Greeks had laws regarding homosexuality as if they did not favor homosexuality, that's an entity that I'm not even going to sit there and entertain, because the Greeks' gods were known as homosexuals. So I remember I'm currently not on the channel for another reason, but I remember going back and forth on Maccabees TV about that particular subject. But after a while, I'm like, no, anybody who's going to sit there and say that the Europeans have any doctrine and punishments in regards to homosexuality, that's a problem. Because they were the biggest homosexuals on earth, even to this day, to where they want children to be taught that inside of schools. You understand? So, you know, once it comes down to that. But in Jeremiah 46, when it speaks, brothers and sisters, about the aspect of Necho, that wasn't Dynasty 22 to 25. That's Dynasty 26. All right. So that's what I want to point out. Now, when it says the outcasts and the dispersed, let's look at this portion right here. Right? We're gonna go on. We're gonna go into the next slide. All right. Therefore, fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant, saith the Lord, neither be dismayed, O Israel. For lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall again be quiet and at ease, and none shall make him afraid. For I am with thee, saith the Lord, to save thee. For I will make a full end of all the nations, whether I have scattered thee, but I will not make a full end of thee. For I will correct thee in measure and will not utterly destroy thee. So let's look at this portion right here, right? Highlighter. Israel. Jacob, my servant. Jacob, whither I have scattered thee. Who was scattered? Who was scattered? What we just read came out of Jeremiah 46. Who was scattered according to what we just read there in the book? It wasn't just Judah. So when we go back to Isaiah chapter 11, verse 12 this time, right? Here's the point we want to emphasize on. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 12, right? It says this. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcast of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The dispersed of Judah is here. The fuzot. All right, that means dispersed. Now, let's look at this, brothers and sisters, and we want to highlight this in red for edification purposes. You see that portion right there? That's the pay and the zadeh that's highlighted. And then you see the pay and the zadeh highlighted there, right? And then we have, brothers and sisters, the highlighter in yellow. And I'm going to circle this for edification purposes. And we're going to circle this, brothers and sisters, in the blue. No, let's lose red so it can stand out. All right, I'm going this meticulous on read for a purpose. Hapit otika. Hapit otika. Now let's go back to this portion right here, brothers and sisters. Now you just seen that word right there, right? Highlighter. And you're looking at the Hebrew right here. Hapit otika. Why am I going here, brothers and sisters? For edification purposes. Scattered thee. I have scattered thee. Now we want to point this out, and I'm going to circle this in black. Right? Thee. Remember, scatter is a verb. You is that ka. That consonant with the ka sound, that's how you get the thee, which is you in Old English. Hapitz otika. And who was scattered? Israel was scattered. Jacob was scattered. So when we go back into Isaiah chapter 11, when it says, brothers and sisters, the dispersed also scattered, hapitz otika, that root you see similar right there, that root you see similar right there, this tika, that T shows it to be the past tense. That ka represents you. Hapitz otika. So if you were to take that off, hapitz, it comes from, just like the noun here, nipuzot. See how that works? That's Hebrew edification. This is why we're dealing in the aspect of linguistics. You understand? Any questions about this so far? What am I saying? That the outcasts and the dispersed is talking about the 12 tribes. So we should not use Isaiah chapter 11, verse 12, saying, oh, it's only talking about Judah. Because the same word for dispersed in roots is the same word, is the same word we see here, if we will. This is Jeremiah, right? Chapter 46, right? Hapitz otika. The same root word that's translated there as scattered is the same root word that's translated here with the noun as dispersed. So the dispersed of Judah is in link, brothers and sisters, with all the 12 tribes being outcast and dispersed. When they were cast out, when they became outcast, they were then dispersed. And that's why we read Deuteronomy 28, verse 64 beforehand. Are there any questions concerning that, brothers and sisters? Any questions or comments concerning that particular aspect? Let's go on to the next slide. First Kings, chapter 16, verse 32. First Kings, chapter 16, verse 32. And it says this. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. It's talking about Ahab, king of Israel. You know, Ahab, king of Israel, is mentioned by Shalman Nisar III. All right, let's go on. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 14. And thou shalt not turn aside from any of the words which I command you this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. Amos chapter 5, verse 1, and then verse 5. Hear ye this word which I take up for a lamentation over you, O house of Yisrael. But seek not Bethel, nor enter into Gilgal, and pass not to Be'er Sheba. For Gilgal shall go into captivity, and Bethel shall come to naught. Why are we going here in the book of Amos? Gilgal was in the northern kingdom, but Be'er Sheba was in the southern kingdom. Be'er Sheba was in the land of Simeon. The land of Simeon was within the land of Judah. So that was within the southern kingdom. So it says, but seek not Baal and nor enter into Gilgal. All of these are northern cities, right? And pass not to Be'er Sheba. That's the southern kingdom. Why did I go and point this out? Because you had Israelites that were of the northern tribes going to the southern kingdom, and then there were Israelites of the southern kingdom that was in the northern tribes. For instance, brothers and sisters, did you know that Amos was an Israelite prophet from the northern kingdom that was sent to talk to the southern kingdom of Judah? Did you know that Isaiah was from the southern kingdom, but he talked in part to the northern kingdom? Not so hard to figure out what's going on, brothers and sisters. See, they wanted to suppress this knowledge of Israel so hard to where they actually, quote unquote, set up societies to try to sit there and not even promote Egypt, but more so use Egypt as a catalyst to try to go against Israel. That's where you messed up at. 2 Kings 33 and Jeremiah 15. And Manasseh made Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to err, so that they did evil more than the nations, whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel. Now Hezekiah is mentioned by Sennacherib. Did you know that? And Manasseh is mentioned by Sennacherib. So let's go to Jeremiah, because it's not even mentioned inside of here and typed up. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 50, if we will. All right? Jeremiah chapter 50, brothers and sisters. We're going to go in verse 33. And it says this. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. So what are we looking at right here? In Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 33. It says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. All they that took them captive. Who took Israel and Judah captive? Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 17 says, Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven upon him. First, the king of Assyria hath devoured him. And last, this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had broken his bones. So in Jeremiah, all right. Yeah, Jeremiah was from the pardon me, Amos, sorry. Yeah, Amos was from the southern kingdom. If I said the opposite, I stand corrected. Yeah, Amos was from Judah. All right. Amos was not from the northern kingdom. If I said that, I stand corrected. But Amos actually was from the southern kingdom. So when we're looking at now at this highlighted part, right? In Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 33, right? It says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. Or they that took them captive hold them fast. They refuse to let them go. Let who go? Let Israel go. Like it says in Exodus, let my people go. Then it goes on to say in Jeremiah 50, verse 17, Israel is a scattered sheep. So let's understand, brothers and sisters, what's going on in that particular regard. Right? Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away, meaning away from his land. From, it says, first, the king of Assyria, we already went over that in the book of Kings, hath devoured him. And last, this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had broken his bones. Whose bones? Brothers and sisters, broken the bones of the house of Israel. So we're the house of Israel after that was not able to stand strongly, certainly on their own accord. This is why when Persia comes along, you find Nehemiah getting permission from the Persian king to sit there and do things, because after Assyria and Babylon, Israel didn't have a very strong foundation after that, unfortunately. So when it says, first Assyria devoured him, and last this king of Babylon had broken his bones, devour means you've been eaten up. And then what's left is your skeleton, like your bones. And after that, Babylon just came and just broke the bones. So now, like I stated, as we see later on with Persia, you find in what they call the Elephantine Papyrus mentioned earlier about Israelites trying to get permission to have something in their favor against a guy named Sanballat. When you go into the record between ancient Israel and Darius II. That's another thing they don't talk about. See, these are things, brothers and sisters, we want to go for edification purposes. It says this in Jeremiah chapter 15. Then said the Lord unto me, though Moses and Samuel stood before me, yet my mind could not be toward this people. Cast them out of my sight and let them go forth. The Wabians, stop trying to say because the Most High sees all, that means out of his sight means that they're destroyed forever. Not what it means. It says what will happen. I will cause them to be a horror among all the kingdoms of the earth, because of Manasseh, son of Hezekiah, king of Judah, for that which he did in Jerusalem. The things you do, brothers and sisters, affect later generations. Black man, Shib'una, take heed, please. The things that you do affect other generations. It ain't just all about you. Okay? Next slide. The books for edification purposes. Available on lulu.com. This book here. All right? Deuteronomy 28. History Untold to the Masses. This book is available online. All right? The contents is introduction. From Sumer to America. Brief history of Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15 to 68. The 12 tribe charts. Extra notes on the subject of history. This right here is chapter 6. Extra notes on the subject of history. Brothers and sisters, nothing but college references. Bibliography and acknowledgments. Appendix A, From Sumer to America, Part 2. Appendix B, Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, extended. That's the portion when I get into the aspect, right, of dealing with Munter, the Roman historian, when I deal with the comments that were made by certain people online and email or whatever else. Oh, what you talking about? Deuteronomy 28:68 is not right, and it happened in 70 AD. That right there gets into more so of those notes. All right, because Christianity can't stand when Israel is said as the son of God. So they're fighting for a point in that. All right, the whole Kemetic thing don't stand because they have a problem with it, with the creator of heaven and earth. Then you have it to where Judaism tries to sit there and try to attack us in that particular regard because we are saying that the European Khazar converts are not the true house of Israel, and we are. So our stance and what we talk about, anybody go up there talking about the aspect of the Rothschilds and the European Jews creating what you understand as quote unquote the Black Hebrew Israelites is off. All right. Next slide, please. This book, as stated, is available on lulu.com. Hebrew is easy, also available on lulu.com. Right? Contents, introduction, the alphabet and the vowels. That one is important because of the aspect of saying whether or not the Hebrew has vowels or not. I explained it in that one. Simple rules of Hebrew, simple understanding of masculine nouns, simple understanding of the qual or collar stem, conclusion, bibliography about the author. All right? So these are things we want to point out for edification purposes. This book is also available on lulu.com. Now, my most controversial book, which I don't even talk much about, also available on lulu.com. Old Testament Israelites Respond to Messianic Israelites. Now, I know a lot of people who subscribe to the channel or who share the video might be what they deem themselves as Messianic. This book right here simply explains our stance as being what you call non-Messianic or quote-unquote Old Testament based. All right, the table of contents is Old Testament brothers' stance. The matter of sacrifices. What about the lamb? Jeremiah 31. The matter of the covenant. Isaiah chapter 7. Emmanuel and the Assyrians. Deuteronomy 18. A prophet who succeeded Moses. Old Testament based brothers respond. Said prophecies of Jesus explained. Jesus and Paul versus Moses and Solomon. That right there, brothers and sisters. And in chapter 8, which is called Jesus and Paul versus Moses and Solomon, right? That was a chapter that was written due to the fact that, not naming anyone's particular name, but the school ISUPK that went on Sarnetta channel and said that Old Testament Israelites are basically stupid. No, don't do that. Don't do that. That's why I wrote that chapter right there. All right? Called Jesus and Paul versus Moses and Solomon. Because it's us standard, our standard, pardon me, as Old Testament based Israelites, when you're using a platform to say that, quote, Old Testament Israelites are dummies and stupid and so forth and so on, and then you didn't expect a response. That's why I put that in the book. All right, let's go on. Old Testament based Israelites Respond Part 2, Conclusion and Reasoning, Bibliography about the author. All right, so next we have this one here. Egypt Talk and Writing. Did the Torah come from the culture of Talmeri? This book will be released this month, March of 2019. Today is March 23rd, all right, by the way. And this book will be released, brothers and sisters, this month. Stay tuned to the channel so that way you can gain information on when such will be, okay? Now, looking at this right here, the content is the same as the old book with more information. Subscribe to this channel, like, comment, share, and contact me, 908-587-4841. Giving honor and praise unto the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Brothers, sisters, the contact information is there. By text or call, you can reach out to me. I'm going to ask the person that I spoke with in the chat earlier, Doraya, if you're still able to hear me, call me tomorrow at that number so we could talk about that whole chronology thing one-on-one as brothers. All right? So, say shalom and have a good night. So, 11:45 over here. Lato. Good night. Shalom.